Alright, this is my 100% speedrun of Rayman 2 for N64. Right at the beginning here, there are a few time savers. I changed the language to Italian because it makes the cutscenes a little faster, and also I changed the graphics settings to low resolution maximum sharpness, and that just kind of makes the game as a whole run faster. So 100% in this game is defined using the in-game percentage counter, and basically you get 0.1% for each lum, and there are 1,000 lums, so you pick up all the lums, and that's 100%. 100% does not include the cages, but I do end up getting almost all the cages in this run. So I started this run quite a while ago, I think it was 2013, and I kind of worked on it on and off. You might have seen my old 80% run. It was 2:17:25. That's since been beaten by quite a bit. I think right now I have a 2:06 or something. But when I did the old 80% run, I think I said in the comments for that 100% would probably be too hard to speedrun in a single segment, because there are quite a few places where it's very easy to miss a lum, and it was hard to do. I'd say it was much harder than 80%. A few of the hardest places are the Iron Mountains and the prison ship, which are near the end of the game, and I'll talk about those when I get there. The one thing I don't like about running this game is you can't skip all these cutscenes. That would be it would be much nicer to speedrun this game if you could skip all this stuff, but yeah, it's not as bad as other games. So I think this intro takes about 3.5 minutes to get through.
No, it's bad. Never stew. Talent proof stew. Oh, whoa, can't shut up. Huh? Leah, Phil. Do what I need. Just good Brewster. Oh, we got with you. Oh, you're the Zabba. Now what's for real? Give me the next column. Yay! Rayman! Oh, you're the Zabba. Phone to consider one knee.
So here's the first part of the game, just sliding down here. On these sliding sections, it's faster to jump, so you'll see me jumping quite a bit. Toward the end there, if you jump, you can get stuck on the wall, so I stopped jumping for a few seconds there. Now at the beginning of this level there's a time saver, and what you do is you jump here, and when you land you jump with good timing, and it lets you skip that little text there. I didn't get it that time. I'd say maybe 10 or 15% of the time I get that, but it's not a big deal to miss that. Now after getting this lum here, you can jump right up to this platform, and it's kind of tricky. You kind of have to press against that wall there. And here's another trick. you jump on the edge of that platform and you're outside of the trigger zone for that cutscene with the baby glow boxes. So that saves probably 45 seconds or so. And then right here, I go into first person mode because it basically zooms in the camera and makes the cage visible, and the cage won't break unless it's visible. So by going into first person mode, you can break the cage a little bit faster.
Phone to consider one day. Get you to, yeah. Stop.
There are a few things they didn't translate. They just put stop in English. Now at the beginning of this level there's a big time saver. What you do is walk up to this corner here, you jump up and press L right before landing and it lets you walk underwater, and then the second part is you jump up helicopter right at the surface and that lets you swim in midair. So now you can just swim freely around this area and collect the lums. You can also swim out of bounds, which I'm doing here. I don't have enough air to make it to the end in one go, so what I do is surface here. The water extends out of bounds, so you can stay out of bounds and refill your air. Now I'm swimming above this room. You have to be careful you don't go too low or else you'll go back in bounds. And then you can just swim right through that poison water there. So that trick is called air swimming, and I use that twice in this run. The first one is easier. The second one, it's harder to start the actual air swim, and also you have a pretty small margin of error. It's easy to run out of air if you're not careful, but the first one's pretty simple. This sliding section, it can be tricky to move fast there because you can hit the wall and lose your speed. I'd say I did okay there. It can be done faster than that. This piranha, what you do is you mash B when he hits you. He actually knocks you off the vine, but if you shoot immediately, you regain control and grab the vine, and so it looks like you're not even getting knocked off the vine, but you are getting knocked off for a few frames. So this is kind of the first side area that you don't see at all in any percent. The lums here are not very fast, so you wouldn't go here in an any percent run. Then after getting these, I just do a death warp, and that brings me back to the previous room. And you might have noticed there, when you're respawning, what you can do is press L, and that cuts off the respawn animation in the middle of it. So that saves a split second every time you respawn and I do use quite a few death warps, so that saves some time over the course of the run. Now, these barrels can also knock you off the web, just like the piranha before, so I prefer to just avoid them rather than trying to grab the web again. Here's another Murphy tech skip. You just jump, and yeah, I didn't get it there. I'd say this one is a little bit harder than the one in the Woods of Light. Now you do have to fight this pirate here because you have to carry a barrel back quite a ways, and you can't carry it back while he's shooting at you. So I shoot him once and then throw the barrel. That's quite a bit faster than just shooting him 6 times. And what I do there is I fire a shot right after throwing a barrel, and that helps you start running sooner. So whenever I throw something, I usually shoot, but not always. So right up ahead, you're going to see I throw the barrel without shooting. If you shoot that pirate, he becomes invincible and the barrel will not damage him. So for that reason, I just throw the barrel without shooting. The barrel kills him in 1 hit, whereas it would take 3 hits with normal shots. And then no need to fight that guy, just jump down. Now in this room you have to carry these barrels forward and throw them at those X's. You have to throw the barrel vertically, and so you can kill those enemies, but you want to do as few vertical throws as possible because they do slow you down. And the fewest possible is 1 vertical throw per X that you're destroying. And it helps to use marks on the floor so you can throw the barrel as soon as possible. Like here, I go right past that wooden platform and then make the throw. And there I kind of ran through the barrel for some reason. That usually doesn't happen. So here's the cutscene where you get the ability to use purple lums, and there are no purple lums before this point in the game, so I wondered at one point if this cutscene actually gives you the ability to use purple lums, because you wouldn't know anyway, because there are no purple lums before this. And I tested with GameShark and used Moonjump to get past this section, and it turns out you actually do get the ability to use purple lums here, so even if you could somehow get across the gap at the top of this room, you wouldn't be able to finish the game, I think, because there are quite a few places where you need to use purple lums.
Do what I need. Yeah, Rayman.
These parallel walls up here can be a little tricky, so I like to run all the way to the wall and then start moving up. If you jump first and then come into the parallel walls from higher up, sometimes they kind of push you backward and you have to start from the bottom. And when you're helicoptering like this, it saves some time to hold Z. It kind of puts you in a different position, and it also makes you move forward a little faster, but you don't maintain your height as well. So in areas where there's a jump that you can just barely make, I don't hold Z, but usually when I helicopter, I hold Z, and that helps you go faster. And with these wind tunnels, you want to leave the wind tunnel as soon as possible and get to the other one. And unfortunately, I went a little too soon on one of these tunnels. I don't remember which one, but I left, yeah, it was right there. I left the tunnel and I didn't have enough height, so I had to go back. So that was unfortunate, I'd say. Because of that, this level was slower than average. So that's the last lum I'll be getting for now. I need to come back later and get the last 2 lums. So you can skip those lily pads there, just jump straight to this net. Saves a little bit of time.
You wanted me more, mister?
Now in this section you can speed up by holding Z, so when Rayman is crouching like that, I'm holding Z. You can't turn while you're crouching, so when I need to turn, I usually uncrouch and then turn and then crouch again to go faster. Also, crouching protects you from those enemies. If you hit them while you're crouched, instead of dying, you'll just uncrouch and then you can crouch again. Now you do 3 laps around this little island here. Usually it takes 1 lap to break the cages and 1 lap to grab the lums. If you miss breaking a cage or grabbing a lum, then the 3rd lap is a backup, so that's kind of nice to have. Also, I bounce off that wall there. I think it speeds you up a little bit. So coming up is probably one of the trickier parts of the run. There's this rock with 3 lums next to it, and what I do is go right next to the rock and jump, and it's easy to mess that up. If you move toward the rock too aggressively, you'll bounce off the rock and miss the lums. If you move too slowly, you won't be able to grab the first lum. So It's pretty tricky, but I'd say it's not as tricky as some of the other stuff later in the run. You can also bounce off the top of the rock. I've found that to be less consistent. If you hit the wrong part of the rock, you'll get a weird bounce and you won't get the lums. So I prefer the method I use here. So here's the first optional level. You just go over to the side here. This is the Walk of Life. I'd say this is a fairly easy level. At the beginning, with that sliding section, you can gain some time by using a slightly riskier strategy, but the way I did it here is pretty quick. And you'll notice I often jump up these walls when I'm climbing them. Usually that lets you go a little bit faster. Now I skipped that checkpoint there, so I have less time on the clock, but it's not too hard to make it when you skip the checkpoint. I think I usually have about 3 or 4 seconds to spare when I get to the next checkpoint. So my time was 1:38.86, I think it said. That's pretty good. I'd say usually I get in the 1:39 range. With riskier strategies, you can get in the 1:37 range, but I don't think it's really worth it. Now you can skip this next platform here and jump straight to that one there. It's kind of tricky, it's easy to fall in, and it doesn't save much time, so I don't like doing that. This next switch can be a little bit tricky. It doesn't have auto aiming on it. I actually almost missed it there. I had to stop and shoot it again. Most of the switches in the game have auto aiming, so if you're aiming in roughly the right direction, you'll just automatically aim at it. And there, if you jump before shooting the purple lum, you get more momentum on your swing, so that helps you go a little bit faster. And then here you can bounce shots off this wall to break a cage, so now I don't have to stop on this platform to break the cage. And here you can bounce shots off this wall to break the cage. Sometimes the lums don't come toward you, so you have to be careful, make sure you get them. If they don't come toward you, then you can just turn around and look at them, and that'll make them come toward you. You can skip this pirate fight here. What you do is run out on that metal ledge there. You jump forward and you get boosted by the pirate's shot. It's pretty difficult to time. The pirate's shot is also pretty small, so it's hard to get hit. Yeah, unfortunately I bounced on the barrel. That slows you down a little bit. Helicoptering in general slows you down, so I try to get through sections like this without helicoptering. For the most part I did a pretty good job there. You're supposed to hit that switch to extend this platform, but you can make it easily. Just jump out, helicopter, and shoot the purple lum. And with those pirates, I like to get hit in the air, because if they hit you while you're on the ground, they squish you and you're stuck for a few seconds. So it's better to get hit in the air. Avoiding getting hit at all is kind of slow. Here you can shoot this cage if you jump at the right time. So now the teensy is moving toward the end of the level. You can avoid going to the lower section there if you just kind of jump out and then helicopter back. And then while I'm bouncing off those trampolines, I stop my ascent by helicoptering so I can bounce on the next trampoline faster. If you go as quickly as possible there, then you'll be waiting for the teensy instead of the other way around. That time the teensy was waiting for me for a split second, but I didn't lose much time. And you might have seen the bonus level come up for a moment. If you get all the lums and all the cages in a level, there's a bonus level afterward, or at least after most levels, and you can just pause and exit out of the bonus level. But that's relevant for any percent running. You don't want to get all the lums in a level that has a bonus level, because exiting out of the bonus level does take a few seconds. Now at the beginning of this level I use a trick called portal boosting. What you do is you just hold A while you're coming out of this portal at the beginning, and it throws you farther. So that saves a little bit of time. And then after I get these lums, I do a death warp, and once again you'll see this respawn cancel partway through the animation. Rayman just appears all of a sudden, so that saves a split second. Now when I jump in water, I shoot right before I hit the water, and that helps you swim faster. Normally when you land in water, you swim slowly for a second or two, but if you shoot right before landing in the water, you swim at normal speed. I had a little trouble getting that cage. Not too bad. camera was a little funny there. I got lost a little bit. You can get stuck on those rocks when you're swimming up, so you want to be careful, stay away from the walls. Now, normally, you see those two pedestals there, blue and orange. You're supposed to find the blue and orange orbs, put them on the pedestals, and that will open the door. There are a couple ways to get around the door. The way that I'm using here is slower, but it's much easier, I think. The other way involves clipping through the door, but here I'm going to do another air swim. So, same as in the Fairy Glade, you jump up and press L, and I had a little trouble here. This spot is much harder than in the Fairy Glade. I'd say that was pretty fast, though. That can be a real run killer there. It's hard to start or to get underwater. And then, yeah, I have to surface there to get more air. And you have to be careful when you're out of bounds here because there's poison water that can kill you, and also there's a tunnel inbounds. If you go inbounds, you're trapped. But yeah, once I get to this room, I'm now behind that door. You don't have a lot of leeway here. You can see my air meter is pretty low. But yeah, I'd say that was pretty fast overall. And once again, on these sliding sections, it saves time to jump. Also, when you land from a jump, if you land sideways, I find that helps you maintain your speed better, so oftentimes I'll land sideways. So here's the first boss. Pretty easy fight, you just swing up there and drop the stalactite on his head. On the PC version you can skip this fight. I've never managed to do it on N64. I think the sliding physics are different, and on PC you can slide up those walls on the side and jump over the gap. I'm not sure that it's possible on N64. So here's the first masked cutscene. This one's a couple of minutes long. The one nice thing about having unskippable cutscenes is that it does give you a chance to take a break. Most of the cutscenes in this game, you don't have to press A to advance through text, so you can just leave for a couple minutes and come back. So you have to go to this level, the Menhir Hills, twice. The first time you have to watch this cutscene, and when you watch the cutscene, it puts that walking shell in a different position. So after the cutscene ends, he immediately starts running toward me. So for that reason, I tire the walking shell out and then go across the gap. And then the second time I go to the level, the walking shell's not ready at the beginning, so I take the opportunity to get the other lums at the beginning. You can actually skip fighting these pirates. If you tiptoe past them, they stay asleep and the door stays open, but that's slower than just fighting them. And then if you jump with good timing there, you skip a short cutscene. Now in this room, what I do is I get the walking shell to come toward me and then lure him over to this part of the level, this part of the screen. And you have to be careful because he can run into the walls and blow up. But if you do it correctly, then the walking shell is right underneath you ready to go, so that saves some time. If you miss a lum in this walking shell section here, you do go back through here later, so you get another opportunity to get the lums. Now, I'm not boosting here because there are certain places where if you boost, it causes you to crash into the floor or crash into the wall. So that can be very annoying. And here I'm boosting and then jumping across the gap. Then here's a glitch. What you do is, it's hard to explain this fast, but it's called the infinite barrel flying glitch, and you'll see I'm flying, but I'm not actually holding a barrel. That's a very fun glitch to do, but unfortunately it's not very useful in runs. That's the only time I do it in this run, and I think in 80% it wouldn't be used at all. But basically you have to start barrel flying while you're invincible, and the barrel will blow up, but you'll still be flying, and you can fly for any length of time, and when you hit walls you don't lose the barrel, so it's easy to go out of bounds. Now, here's a glitch I really like. Maybe not a glitch, but a trick. What you do is you walk across the bridge and then you start going back and immediately turn around and go forward. That causes Rayman to run around close to the Menhir Hills, and it lets you jump sooner. Typically you have to jump across all those lily pads. With this trick, you don't have to jump on lily pads, so that saves a few seconds. Then here's the last lum for March's Awakening that I didn't grab before. So Cave of Bad Dreams has a number of places where you can mess up. I'll point those out as I get to those. when you're jumping across these skulls, you want to avoid helicoptering because it makes you go a little bit slower. And here, similar to in the bayou, I jump before grabbing the purple lum. It gives you a little more momentum. And you're supposed to go over the top of this platform, but you can actually just climb around it and then jump and grab the purple lum. Now with this mini boss fight, the locations that these guys spawn in are random. Sometimes they spawn in pretty inconvenient locations, like if there's one behind the other, you can only shoot one of them at a time, whereas if they're side by side you can alternate. I'd say I got pretty good locations there. Unfortunately I messed up the throw afterward. But yeah, I think the good luck in that battle almost compensated for missing that throw. So here's a pretty annoying room. When you're grabbing these spinning platforms, you can't jump up. See, typically when I grab an edge, I jump instead of pulling myself up. It helps you get up faster. But on these platforms, if you jump up, sometimes the ledge pushes you down instead and you fall and die. And once you get this orb, it can be pretty tricky to throw it because the camera angles can be bad. I move around a little bit to get better camera angles. But yeah, if you miss one throw, then the platforms kind of get into a bad rhythm, so you want to make sure you don't miss the first throw. Now here's kind of a tricky time saver. What you do is you just stand still here, and there are these two moving platforms. When I'm standing still there, the first platform is active. The second platform is not active. So by standing still, I get the first platforms into a place where as soon as I get there it moves, and so that basically helps me get to the second platform on the first cycle. That was the second platform right there, and that saves probably about 8 seconds. So that's a pretty good time saver. You have to be careful with those worms there. They can knock you off if you fail to kill them. Once again, more bad camera angles when you're throwing this orange orb. Now for this next throw, I like to go into first person mode, just make sure I'm lined up correctly. If you miss that throw, it can actually end the run, because if the orange orb lands right on the edge of the platform, what it will do is it will fall down and then reappear, and then fall down and reappear, and you can't grab it, so that your run is over. These orbs, you have to be careful because the orange orb sometimes goes toward the blue pedestal. So I like to get the blue orb onto the pedestal first, because that prevents the orange orb from moving toward the blue pedestal. I messed it up a little there, but overall that was still pretty fast. Now in this sliding section, I don't jump a whole lot, because if you jump you can hit these crystals here, and that will slow you down and the boss kills you. So for the most part I don't jump. I think I jump a few times toward the end. Now in this battle you have to shoot these skulls that he throws at you, and they turn into platforms that you can use to get across. You're supposed to use one set of skulls and then wait for a new set of skulls to get back, but actually what you can do is just go forward so the boss hops across and then use the same skulls again. And that, I'd say it's not too hard, but you have to watch out for the fireballs, and you also have to make sure you go fast enough so the skulls don't fall down. And then this gap you can do with one skull. Yeah, I did it with one skull there. If you use more skulls, it's safer, but it takes longer. There are a few gaps like that. The next one also, you can do it with one skull. I believe in this run, I didn't quite get the first skull into a good position, so I ended up using two skulls. Yeah, it just didn't look safe to make that jump to this ledge here. That one's another one where sometimes I use two skulls if the first skull's in a bad position. This one you can do with four skulls, and it's important to do it with four because after four, for some reason, he takes a long pause, so you see he's not throwing any more skulls. So if you have to wait for a fifth skull, you lose quite a bit of time, so it's good that I got that in four. So now you get to choose between the bad ending or continuing with the game, and recently an out of bounds trick was found in this boss fight, and if you go out of bounds and then use moon jump, you can actually get to the island where the bad ending takes place, so that's kind of fun. This next cutscene is pretty glitchy. If you press buttons here, sometimes you get kicked out of the cutscene and you don't get to keep the life potion. So I don't press any buttons here. What I do is hold up on the control stick, and for some reason that causes you to fall through the floor afterward. I think maybe you're moving during the cutscene and maybe there's not collision for the floor, but yeah, I just fall through the floor and that lets me death warp back to the beginning. So you can now skip this cutscene, and what I do here is run forward, and once the walking shell sees me, I turn around. So now the walking shell is coming toward me, and by the time I get back up to the top, the walking shell will be ready to go. You have to be careful right next to those stairs. There's Murphy text. You have to jump over that both times you go through that area. It's pretty easy to avoid, but you do have to be careful. So I did get all the lums the first time I went through this walking shell section. So this time I can just go straight through. And once again, not boosting in this little section here. You can resume boosting a little earlier than I did there, but it's kind of risky to do, so I just held off for a second.
Phone to consider one need. Cheers, Neil. Do what I need. Hey.
Now in this next room there are 4 purple lums, but actually I only used 2. If you turn to the side and then jump with good timing, you can get straight from the first one to the third, and then the 4th one is just not needed at all. Clark kind of pushes you forward there if you stand in front of him. I think it helps you go a little bit faster. Now I like to lure this walking shell into this little cave here, and that helps get another walking shell ready. So as soon as you jump down, there's a walking shell coming. The physics in this walking shell section are kind of strange. It feels like you're being pulled toward the center. It makes those last 3 rocks kind of tricky to get around. Typically, if you hit one of those rocks, you'll bounce off and run off the side and die, so you have to be careful there. This next level, the canopy, is definitely one of the harder levels in the game. There are quite a few time savers. In this first room, what I do is jump up, and you can actually shoot the purple lum right away. And so now I'm about halfway across this web. So that helps me get across without the spider attacking me. And, well, he did hit me at the end, but that didn't cost too much time. Then I go back down to the beginning, and once I get all the lums, then I can just use the purple lum and get across. Now in this room there are a few ways to skip fighting the pirate, but I find that they're a little too risky, so I don't use those. I fight the pirate, and there's a text after you free Glowbox, and I avoid it by just death warping. There's another way to avoid it that involves, instead of death warping, you just run back, but you have to be careful there because if the text activates at the wrong time, it actually freezes the game, so the death warping method is much safer. Now here there's a pole up at the top there, and if you stand at the right place and shoot it, you can actually shoot it from the other side and then knock it down early. That is a bigger time saver than 80% because you can skip watering this plant entirely, but it also saves time in 100% because while you're riding the plant, Globox can immediately start walking up the pole. Typically what you do is ride the plant to the top and then knock the pole down, and only then can Globox start walking up, so you save some time by knocking down the pole early. You have to be careful and keep Globox on screen or almost on screen for most of this part. If he gets off screen, sometimes he stops moving, so you have to keep looking at him. Here I'm just looking at the floor. I don't know if this actually reduces lag, but I don't know, I just do it just in case.
You wanted me more this too? Jello, 40 stem on my lane. Oh, we know it's you. Oh, you're the Zabba Kisutu, yeah. Now it's too. Jello, 40 stem on my lane. Now what's booty you? Telling you. Hey! Oh, we know it's you. Now it's too. Telling you. Yeah! Now it's too.
So here's one of the big time savers in this level. Normally you have to beat the pirate here to get rid of that gate. What you can do is boost over the top of it, and you can use those cannonballs, but it's pretty tricky to do. So what I do is I try it with the cannonballs, but if I don't make it over, I use the pirate's shot. And unfortunately I messed up the first try there. Yeah, I had to wait for him to move and try again. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get that the first time, but I still save time with that trick. I think if you do it perfectly, it saves maybe like 50 seconds or so. Now the second time saver is to skip watering the bush. Typically you hide in the bush to get past this door. What you can do is move backwards so the door starts opening, and the way the door works is once it starts opening, it doesn't start to close until it's all the way open. So as soon as it starts opening, you can just run through it, and it's harder than it looks, but it's not too hard. There was an older method to get through the door that involved using the purple lum. That method was pretty difficult. I don't think I would do that in a run, but this method's not too bad. So Whale Bay, I'd say, is one of the easier levels in the game. There are a few places where you have to be careful. So in any percent you can skip swimming through that tank, but there's a lum there in 100%, so you have to swim through there. Now here what you can do is run to the corner, and that allows you to shoot that switch. Yeah, you couldn't really see the switch, but you have to be careful with that trick because the switch has to be on screen or else your shot won't count. So that's why I jump and look toward it. That barrel hallway can be a little tricky bouncing on the barrels generally makes you lose time, so I try to only bounce once to get the lump in the air, and other than that, try to avoid bouncing. Now with this pirate, what you can do is just take the barrel and keep moving away from him, and he doesn't actually shoot you unless he takes damage. If he doesn't take damage, he only uses the hook, which is pretty easy to avoid. And then the cage is actually not vulnerable until a few seconds after you break the door, so that's why I'm just kind of standing around there. And then also the purple lung, you can't shoot it until it moves to its final position. Now, what you can do here is just kind of jump toward that tree and clip through. I got it pretty quickly there, so that was good. That gets you straight to this room. Normally you have to go underwater and swim through a tunnel. And this walking shell section is pretty short, but you have to be careful jumping over this gap. If you don't do it right, you won't clear the gap and you'll just crash, and you have to start the whole screen over. Then once again, shooting right before I land in the water helps me swim faster. Now, when you're doing these swimming sections with the bubbles, typically the bubbles are a little bit out of the way, so you don't want to get more bubbles than necessary. If you get too greedy and try to skip bubbles, though, you can run out of air. So I tend to err on the side of caution a little bit. You have to be careful with those piranhas. If you run into them, the damage animation takes a few seconds, and not only does it slow you down just from being stuck for a few seconds, but also it takes your air, so you have to grab extra bubbles later on. So in this section, you don't really have to follow Carmen, you just have to stay close enough. You don't have to go like all the way down to the bottom like Carmen does. Then, after I finish that, there's a cutscene skip. You just sort of stand there and jump past the trigger. Then you're supposed to climb up the net, but you can also walk up the mast. It's a little bit tricky to walk up the mast, but I got it there. This sliding section you have to be careful because it's easy to miss a few. If you miss some at the very bottom though, it's fine because what you have to do here is free the teensy and wait for him to open the portal. It takes a while for him to open the portal, so you've got time to go back and get lums that you missed, like I'll go back and get that lum there. That doesn't cost me any time because I just have to wait for the teensy anyway. Now, this level, Sanctuary of Stone and Fire, is the longest level in the game. It's got many optional areas that have lums in them. So in any percent, the level would be much shorter, but 100% you have to go to all these optional areas. Now you have to be careful with this pirate. His hook kills you in one hit, so you have to avoid that. What I do there is I jump off the purple lum, I shoot sort of an X on the wall there, then grab the purple lum again. Now my strategy with this pirate is either deal damage to him or take damage. If you take damage, you're invincible and the hook won't hit you. If you deal damage to him, he uses his shot instead of his hook attack. The shot does not kill you in one hit, so that's safe. But yeah, if he's not invincible, then he can use his hook attack, so you have to be pretty careful there. So you have to go back with this plum and go to these optional areas. And when you're moving with this plum, you can only move in 4 directions, so that's why I'm sort of zigzagging instead of just moving in a straight line. Now, up ahead, there's a pretty big time saver, and what you do is you avoid this green lum, and I do that by bouncing shots off the wall to move that plum there. And it's important to avoid that green lum because what I'm going to do later is death warp, and by avoiding the green lum I get to death warp back to another point in the level. Now right here is probably the biggest mistake of the run. That plum just moved to the left for some reason. I don't think I've ever seen it do that. And I didn't really practice for that situation because it was so unusual. I don't think I've ever encountered it before. And so that's why I kind of stood around for a few seconds. I was waiting for another plum to grow there, but then I realized that's not the tree, that's not where the plum comes from, so I had to go back and get another plum. I guess in hindsight, I maybe should stand a little bit to the left of that shadow there. But anyway, there's the payoff for avoiding the green lum. I get to death warp all the way back here. Now the death warp there, and so now we're ready to actually go forward in the level. These shadow fuzzballs are very annoying. Jump onto that plum is pretty tricky. The camera angle is kind of unusual, so it's easy to land a little bit to the side. So I like to be careful and use my helicopter there. So here's another side area. You go up the river and there's this temple up here. I kind of shoot that wall as I'm moving through the room. That way when I get to the end of the room, I don't have to stand still and shoot at it. You can skip jumping on that stalactite there, but it's pretty tricky to do. I'd say it's too risky. Then up ahead there's another stalactite. This one I do skip. It's kind of tricky. It's harder than it looks because there's an invisible ceiling there that can push you down. I'd say it's borderline whether it's worth the risk. It saves about a second. I think it's probably worth doing though. Now, up at the top here, you're supposed to go through this tunnel, but what you can do is just jump toward that purple lum, and you can just shoot it from there. Once again, looking down, I don't know if this actually reduces lag, but I figure it can't hurt. Now the spider there just ignores you, so you can just walk right by him. This walking shell section is the glitchiest in the game in terms of crashing into the floor. If you boost at the wrong time, you'll crash into the floor. Also, if you fail to boost at certain times, you'll crash into the floor. So it's really just a matter of memorization, learning where to boost and where not to boost. Once you learn it, I'd say it's not too difficult. Like when you're running off there, for example, if you don't boost, you'll die when you hit the floor, or you're likely to die. So here's a pretty cool trick. What you do is toss the plum up there, ride it up here, and there's this seam, and you can just kind of press against the seam and push up. That's the trickiest part, getting up that seam there. I'd say I got up pretty fast there. Now you can just kind of ride up the wall here, and once you get high enough, the wall isn't solid, so you can just jump through. I think that saves about 10 seconds compared to going the normal way. Now, with this mini-boss, what you do is you look away, and that causes him to move toward you. You can skip this mini-boss, actually, But since I have the golden fists, I figure I might as well just fight the boss because he doesn't take very long. The trick to skip him is not very easy, so if you lose a little bit of time doing the trick, then you're going to be slower than just fighting the mini-boss. In any percent, you don't have the golden fists, so I'd say it's probably worth it to skip the mini-boss there. Now you can actually move to the left of this next yellow lava pool and bounce over the rock there, but I think it's a little bit risky. And then when you're going over this lava fall here, you can ride on the rock on the side, and that helps you get farther, so you don't have to use your helicopter as much, so that saves some time. Green loam is too slow. So you can avoid taking damage here and avoid losing your golden fists, but it really doesn't save that much time, and you have to go out of your way to avoid those thorns. So for that reason I don't bother trying to avoid the thorns. If you do manage to keep your golden fists, it saves a very small amount of time later on. So here's another side area. There are these webs in here, and what you can do is take the plum directly under the second web and jump up through it. The camera angle is very awkward when you do that, so you risk falling into the lava, so I don't bother doing that. I've lost a few runs doing that, so I decided not to do that. And then after you get that cage, there's usually a text, but you can skip it by just being in the air when you break the cage. Here's maybe my least favorite room in the game. It's got the worm and fuzzball enemies, and it's also got orb throwing with bad camera angles, so it sort of has a little bit of everything. Yeah, see, I was about to throw there, but then they hit me. Right here, I get hit by the flame deliberately because you're gonna get hit anyway. So there's no point grabbing the orb and then losing the orb from getting hit. Yeah, I'd say I took 1 or 2 more hits than usual there, so that was a little bit slow. With this plum, I like to run as far forward as I can. Yeah, right there. It didn't actually start moving toward me, so that's why I run forward, but that time I guess maybe I didn't run forward far enough. Also, when you're taking the plum, you're taking the orb on the plum, sometimes the orb doesn't follow you, so then you have to turn around, grab the orb again, that loses quite a bit of time. But luckily that didn't happen there. Now, in any percent, you can actually skip the orange orb. You can use a damage boost from one of these fuzzballs and get up to the upper level and go straight to the blue orb. But in 100%, there are some other lumps that I have to get, so I do have to get the orange orb. This loading zone at the end of this room is very strange. It looks like it's two loading zones, one on the top and one on the bottom, but actually they both go to the same place. And I found an out-of-bounds trick a long time ago to get to the upper loading zone before you rotate that dial there. So I thought that would be a big time saver and you can go straight to the blue orb. But unfortunately, I found out the loading zones are actually one loading zone, or maybe it's two, but they both go to the same place, I'm not sure. This sliding section, you have to be careful you don't bounce off the walls when you're making a turn. Like here, you don't want to bounce off the wall on the right because it can push you into the lava. Now to get on top of Umber, there are a few options. One option is to death warp and then float over to him. What I do there is take the purple lum directly to Umber's shoulder. That can be a little tricky. What I like to do is jump right next to the purple lum and then shoot it, and that gives you a nice amount of momentum. That makes it pretty easy to get up to Umber. Now in any percent you can clip right through that door there and skip the entire first area. In 100% I do need to get the lums here, so I'll need to get those first. Now what I do here is I lure the pirate over, so you just kind of look at him, and I jump on this rock. Now I shoot him, and that causes him to shoot me, and he boosts me up to that ledge there. So that's a pretty good time saver. It's possible to get straight up to that ledge without a damage boost, but it's pretty tough. So now I'm going to clip through the door, and what I do is I change the graphics to high resolution. So that kind of makes the game laggier and helps you get through the door. And I got through pretty fast there, so that was good. So now we go back to the fairy glade to get those last two lums. This section can be pretty tricky. There's one checkpoint in the middle, but it's sort of out of the way, so I don't get that. So if you mess up at the end, you have to repeat the whole section. So it's kind of dangerous, but it's not too hard to avoid dying. Now here what I do is I press it against this fence, and you can jump on the fence and go straight to the platform there. That skips some climbing on the wall. Here, I haven't mentioned this yet, but if you hold Z while you're climbing, it lets you move faster. So I used that a few times throughout the game. It also makes it easy to avoid those fuzzballs, so you don't have to shoot those guys. These platforms can be kind of dangerous because they're small, and like I said, if you fall here, you have to repeat the entire section. But it's not too hard, and it went well there. So here you're supposed to take a barrel to get up to this switch, but actually you can just stand on this post here and jump and shoot the switch. So that saves some time. That barrel flying section there is very tricky to start because sometimes when you start, you're facing the wrong way and you just go straight into the water or you hit the wall. I sort of approach the flame from the side, which helps avoid that. Now what I do here is I jump off and I break the cage and then do a death warp, and that frees the teensy, and then when you die, the portal opens up immediately, so you don't have to wait for the teensy to get all the way over there. So that saves a pretty good amount of time. So yeah, I didn't get all the cages there. Once again, the cages are not included in the in-game percentage counter. Now, this level, the Precipice, is one that I used to consider one of the hardest levels in the game, but a few things have happened. One, I practiced the level and got better at it, and two, a lot of time savers have been found in other levels that make them harder, whereas this level, not much has been found. You just kind of go straight from the beginning to the end. So other levels have gotten harder, and this one has stayed the same. So it's now one of the easier levels, I think. Yeah, there I was kind of low. I wasn't sure if I was going to get those lumps, so I turned around and made sure I got those. I'd say this first section of the level is the hardest. The cannonballs can kill you, and also you can fall down pretty easily. But yeah, I got through there quickly, and the rest of the level is easier, I think. Now you can skip a level of this sinking tower. What you do is just kind of turn around and jump straight up to that web, or that net there, and that's pretty easy to do and saves a good chunk of time. Once again, bouncing on the barrels loses some time, so I only bounce in the last one there, which kind of helps you get up that platform. Yeah, the golden fists save time. Oh, I had trouble getting on the net. The golden fists save time up ahead, so I want to not take too much damage, so I can make sure I keep those. Yeah, I had a little trouble climbing up those boxes there, but nothing major. Yeah, the timing with that cannonball, you don't really want to stop and wait for it, so I just went ahead and took the hit. Losing one golden fist is fine. If you lose two, then I think you'll lose time by doing that. Yeah, this section I like to just shoot constantly because there's so many things in front of you. It's easier to just shoot constantly rather than trying to remember where they are. The exception is right up ahead. You don't want to shoot the guy in front because if you just leave him, then those two will collide, and you don't have to worry about the one in the back chasing after you. Now here's one of the main places where it helps to hold Z while helicoptering. I mentioned that back in the Fairy Glade. It helps you move forward faster, but you also lose height faster. So that's perfect for this section because you really don't need a lot of height. It's fine to fall faster. And I think it saves probably 3 or 4 seconds here to hold Z. One thing to note is that while you're holding Z, you can't rotate Rayman, so you can't turn and aim at these guys. So I just briefly release Z and then aim and then hold Z again. Now with this pirate mini-boss at the end, it's possible to lure the cannonballs so that they hit him. They take out a third of his health, I think. But I'm not sure that actually saves time. It might be faster just to shoot him the way I'm doing. It would have been nice to get one more shot. I think maybe I missed some shots there. But actually that was pretty fast. The only thing I messed up was jumping over that railing at the end. You can jump over so that you fall during the cutscene. But yeah, I'd say that level went pretty well. So I think this is maybe the easiest level in the game, one of the easiest. The chair ride with the lums, it makes me a little bit nervous if I've got a good run going, because it seems like it would be easy to mess up on the chair ride. But I can't remember the last time I actually messed that up during a run. That right there is probably the trickiest part, but it's not hard. Now, with these barrel pirates, every time you kill one, there's a text that takes a few seconds, so you want to skip killing them. And what I do there is, well, first run up to that little alcove there, and he does a zap attack that stuns you for a few seconds, so I wait in the alcove to avoid that attack and then just keep running, so you don't have to kill that guy. Now here, when I turn this corner, I walk in sort of a strange way, and that's deliberate because there's a trigger zone to make this next platform move, so I want to walk into that trigger zone as soon as possible. Now, as soon as you break the door here with the barrel, the teensy is free, so in any percent what you could do is just turn around and do a death warp, and that will make the portal open at the end of the level. In 100% I do have to go in that room and get the lum there. But yeah, after doing that I do a death warp, so now I no longer have to wait for the teensy. So here's another barrel pirate that I don't have to fight. You just want to be careful, make sure he doesn't see you, because his zap attack will stun you for a few seconds. This last one I do kill because as you're moving through the room, it's easy to get hit by his zap attack, and the time it takes to kill him is less than what you lose from getting hit a few times. If you do manage to avoid getting hit, you can save time by not killing him, but I think it's a little too risky. Yeah, so now I don't have to wait for the teensy at the end. Now here, off to the left, there's another side level, but I'm not going to go there right now. I'm going to do the rest. I'm going to do the main level first, and I'll explain why later. So because I took that extra hit in the precipice, I only have one golden fist here. So I do have to be careful with these chickens. It's pretty easy to take a hit from these guys. They can come either from the front or the side. It's random, so you just have to pay attention and make sure you shoot them in the right place. Unfortunate that I bounced off that barrel, but then you can bounce off that last barrel and that helps you shoot the purple lum sooner. So that's nice. Now right here what you can do is bounce a shot off this wall and it'll bounce down and hit the cage, so that's nice. Normally you have to drop down to the lowest level and then shoot the cage, so you can save a few seconds by bouncing a shot off the wall. Now I do refill my golden fists here because I'm going to take some more damage up ahead and I don't want to lose the golden fists. Even if I hadn't taken that hit in the precipice, I still would have refilled my golden fists, so the hit in the precipice didn't really cost me much time. Now here you can also bounce a shot off the wall. This part is trickier than the earlier one, but it's a pretty good time saver. Normally this cage is a real pain to hit, so yeah, it's nice to just bounce a shot off the wall as soon as you walk in. Now there's a time saver here. You'll notice there's some lums up there, but I don't get those right away. There's a moving platform up ahead, and what I do is I get the platform to start moving, and then while I'm waiting for it to move, I pick up the lums. And actually I'm going to do the same strategy with these lums in the same room. So I get the platform to start moving, and I'm going to wait for it anyway, so I might as well get the lums. That's faster than getting the lums first and then making the platform move. You have to be careful you don't run too far ahead of the platform because then it'll disappear. But yes, now I can get those lums and the platform is just moving the whole time while I'm doing that. Now, up ahead I paused the game, and that's because I can only fit 2 hours on one DVD at standard recording quality, so I have to put a pause in there somewhere. So that's why you see the visual gap and the audio gap. This room here can be tricky. Right here I look to the left and fire a few shots. There's a cage up there, but you don't actually break the cage until you look at it. Different cages kind of work differently in that way. So now when I float over there, I deliberately change the camera to look at the cage. You have to be careful and get all those lums. I actually had one run which was just under 2:30, which was my goal time, but I missed one of the lums in that room there, so it wasn't actually a 100% run. Now here there's a little cutscene or text skip. You just grab the edge and then jump forward. That lets you bypass the trigger zone for the text.
Mm-hmm. Cheers, Neil. Just give a booster. Do what I need. Yeah!
So keeping the golden fists helps there because you can break that wall with one shot. There are a few places later in this level where it also helps to have the golden fists. Right here, for example, you can break the cage with one hit. Unfortunately, I hit that thorn there, so that took my golden fist and also knocked me downward. Yeah, this is a pretty easy level overall. Basically just keep moving forward and avoid the lava and the thorns. Now right here, you can save some time if you have the golden fists. You can break that floor more easily, but it's not a big deal to not have those. And there I got hit deliberately because that ends your helicopter. While you have the helicopter power up, you can't actually stop your helicopter. You can only ascend or descend. So getting hit takes away, or it turns off your helicopter, so you can fall into that pit faster. These cages can be a little awkward to hit. Yeah, I broke them pretty fast there, but sometimes I lose some time. Now when you're jumping back into this wind stream here, you want to make sure you jump far enough upstream that you can get that lum right there. If you jump too far forward, you might miss the lum. Your only option at that point is to death warp and repeat the whole screen, I think, so that would waste a lot of time. This boss is pretty easy. He always throws the fire in exactly the same way pretty much, so it's pretty easy to learn his patterns. You can actually skip the boss, or you can skip part of the boss fight. What you do is you bounce on one of those webs and you can pull yourself up onto the platform up there and just continue with the level. It's a lot harder than it sounds. I've only done it maybe once or twice. It's definitely too risky for a single segment run. Now after the final hit, you can death warp, and that skips some text, and it also, I think, maybe puts the purple lum in its final position faster. So now I'm going back to Sanctuary of Rock and Lava so I can go to the side level. Doing it this way does take a couple extra seconds in the Hall of Doors because you have to go back and forth, but it saves time overall. That's because when you finish the Walk of Power, you get full Golden Fists, and the Golden Fists save a lot of time in the next level, Tomb of the Ancients. if you were to just do Walk of Power first, and then Sanctuary of Rock and Lava, and then beneath the Sanctuary of Rock and Lava, you wouldn't have any Golden Fists, or maybe you only have one Golden Fist when you finished beneath the Sanctuary of Rock and Lava, and so you wouldn't get the benefit of having the Golden Fists in Tomb of the Ancients. Now here's a little trick. I run forward and run back. By running forward, I make that lily pad spawn. Typically, if you just get those lums in the normal order and like just run straight through that section, you end up waiting a long time for the lily pad. So by running forward and then running back, I spend less time waiting. Yeah, I'd say this is possibly the easiest level in the game. There's just not much to mess up here. So at the end there's another time saver. What I do is I jump to the side. Instead of going straight to the portal, I kind of come at it from the side, and that lets me jump directly on the portal. It actually results in a higher in-game time, but after the teensy dance you go straight in the portal. Typically if you just approach the portal straight on, then after the teensy dance it takes a few seconds to suck you into the portal. So even though this method results in a higher listed time in-game, it results in faster real time. So these last three levels are all pretty tough. They all have quite a few places where you can mess up and lose large amounts of time. The first one, Tomb of the Ancients, is probably the easiest of the three. Like I said, I have full Golden Fists going in here, and those are going to save some time later on. Now, once you run far enough forward in this room here, the auto aim for the switch at the bottom of the pit activates. So what I can do here is just shoot the switch from above. Typically you would have to jump down into that pit and climb out, and so that would be quite a bit slower. In any percent you can also save time. You don't have to do a full lap around the pit, but you can just run part way forward and then run back and shoot the switch. Now I skipped that room on the left. You'll see up ahead, I don't need to go there. This room I go in, and when you hit the switch it raises the platform there. The middle platform is typically raised in that room that I skipped, but you can jump over that gap without the platform there. You can actually jump over the third gap too, but it's much harder to do, and also doesn't save as much time, so I don't do that. Yeah, so there's the first platform, and what you do here is you get hit in midair, and that gives you a little boost, and you also have to shoot after you get hit. That immediately gives you control of Rayman, so that allows you to actually take advantage of the damage boost. You can jump over that gap without getting a damage boost, but it's much harder to do. But yeah, that does cost me a Golden Fist, so I have to be careful. I can still afford to lose one more Golden Fist, but that's all. This room here is probably the main place. Actually, it is the main place where I save time by having the golden fists. You have to fight 4 pirates, and you don't have to fight these last 2, but it helps to kill the one on the left. But if you didn't have the golden fists, it would take much longer to kill those guys. So anyway, that's the 1000th lum, the secret lum. It doesn't show up on the lum counter for this level. And the way that works with the percentage counter is if you don't have every other lum in the game, the secret lum actually has no effect on your percentage counter. So if you had the secret lum and you had 998 other lums, you would only have 99.8% in the game. But as soon as you have all the other lums, then the secret lum gives you that last 0.1%. So if you turn to the right here instead of going straight, you can skip this whole section, but in 100% there are lums here, so you have to go here. There's some platforms off to the left. You can just completely ignore those. There's nothing but red lums up there. Now with these chickens, if you get far enough forward, they disappear. So I think I skipped that last one. Yeah, so he was about to attack me, but I got far enough forward, so he just disappeared. So you can save time and not shoot those guys. When you're climbing horizontally, shooting takes a few seconds, so you want to avoid that if possible. And then there's a little trick, you just look up to make sure that cage gets broken. It's very easy to take a hit here from these chickens. You have to be careful. Yeah, I actually did take a hit. But one golden fist is enough. There's no other place where I take damage deliberately, so as long as I avoid accidental damage, I'll be able to hold the golden fist to the end of the level. Yeah, no need to fight that spider there, you can just jump over him. You have to be a little careful you don't get too much momentum when you're doing these jumps to get the lums. How I like to do it is I always stand still and don't touch the control stick while I'm jumping. That helps me stay on the barrel. Now here's the one place where looking down actually does have an effect for sure. There's a pirate here, and as long as you don't look at him, he doesn't spawn and he doesn't shoot you, so that makes it easier to get through this section. Typically you would have to hop back and forth between the barrels. So then once I get far enough, I just shoot the pirate. You have to avoid his shots for a while typically because he's too far away and you can't hit him. So this next room is pretty dangerous. this pirate kills you in one hit with his hook, so it's similar to the pirate in Whale Bay. You can avoid killing him if you avoid his hook attack. You have to be careful though, because instead of just damaging you, his hook kills you in one hit. But yeah, I got through there pretty nicely. Now, for some reason, during this cutscene, Clark sometimes doesn't run all the way forward. So that time he did run all the way forward, but sometimes he stops part way, and I'm not sure why he does that. I think it has to do with the laser. He stops where the laser would be. But yeah, it seems random whether that happens or not. So anyway, it helps to save the Golden Fist to the Clark battle, because now you can kill Clark in one hit instead of 2 hits. Normally it takes 2 charge shots, but here I'm just doing 1 charge shot and that's it. So very fast battle if you do that correctly. So here's another level where I didn't get all the cages. The cages, like I said, aren't required for 100%. So now onto the Iron Mountains. I think this is probably the hardest level in the game to do correctly. There are a few different places where you can mess up, but there's one main section later on that's really the hardest, and I'll point that out when I get there. Yeah, I lost quite a bit of time there climbing up that thing. Now this switch on the left here doesn't have auto aiming, so that's why I kind of do that weird movement where I move forward a while then turn left. If you fail to hit that while you're coming into the room, it can be pretty time consuming to try to hit that. These guys you have to be careful. Their drill attack will actually give you a game over instead of just killing you. So right there I took a hit, so I was invincible, so I was fine there. You do want to save some golden fists, so you don't want to take too many hits. Now here what I do is I stand right above the cage and I let that barrel pirate throw a barrel and break the cage. There are other ways to break that cage. There's sort of an awkward jump you can do to break the cage and get to the top. If you mess it up, you fall all the way to the bottom, so I don't really like doing that method. for jumps like these, you want to land as soon as possible. Running is faster than helicoptering, so you want to jump as late as possible and then land as early as possible. So here's the section with the hard part. Underneath those rocks are 4 lums. Later on I'm going to get a walking shell, and what you have to do is lure that robot into kicking the rocks away, and then you can get the lums underneath. The robot's movements can be unpredictable. If he touches you, he kills you, and yeah, it's tricky to get right. I'd say it's maybe the hardest part of the game to get right. Some of the glitches might be harder, but this is so late in the game, I'd say it's potentially the premier run killer. So the physics are kind of unusual in this section. You can go up on the walls like that, which saves time. Yeah, so those first lums are easy to get, but over here you have to lure him to kick away these rocks. The strategy I use here is sort of a compromise between speed and consistency. There are faster ways to do it, but they're riskier. And sometimes he doesn't kick away all the rocks. That time he did kick away all of them, so that was good. And this jump to the end is very dangerous because the ground is uneven. Sometimes you'll run over a slight hill on the ground. So when you press A to jump, you're actually in the air and you don't jump. So you might think, well, maybe you can mash A to jump instead, but if you mash A, you don't get a full jump. You have to press and hold. So it's dangerous, and also when you land on the other side, sometimes you just crash into the floor and die, so it's pretty dangerous. I've lost some good runs there, but I got through it pretty quickly this time, so that's good. So now probably the most boring part of the game, saving the glow box babies. Not much to say about this section. You just probably the most important thing is to watch your health. If you rub against the wall too many times, you can die. I'm not sure if that's ever happened to me in a run, but it's happened a couple times when I was just playing, so it's something to look out for.
Now what's for you?
when you're going around those corners, I think you can save a little bit of time by just rubbing against the corner, but I don't want to lose too much health, so I try not to do that too much. So the one little trick in this section is right after I save the babies there, I hold right, and that lets you turn around, and you take a little damage, but it's a lot faster than going into that big open area and doing a turn.
You noticed it? Yellow, 40 stand on my leg. Gets you to his death. Never Phone to consider one knee. Oh, you're the Zabba. Never do.
Ah, por ogni alla ogni. Oh no, 날 찾아오네. 어서 오니 알아보니.
Alright, now onto the final level, the prison ship. The hard part about this level is the sliding section at the beginning. You have to slide down and collect all the lums. The sliding physics are pretty difficult to use. In fact, I think they made the physics easier in other versions of the game, but on N64 the sliding physics are pretty tough. And so I practiced this level a lot, and unfortunately this is one of the few cutscenes that they don't let you skip the second time you see it, so you have to sit through this cutscene every time. So the sliding section has 2 screens to it. This first one is easier than the second one. So I don't do a lot of jumping here because jumping kind of takes away control, and you want to stay in control and get all the lums. This jump over the lava is probably the trickiest part of this first screen here. But yeah, the second screen is really the harder part. It's got a few lums in the air, and when you land from a jump, you don't want to touch the control stick because it takes away control. I mentioned earlier, if you're sideways when you land, you go faster, but here it's more important to stay in control so you can get all the lums. Now this section, what I do is jump against the rail, which helps you move up. I think it is possible to get all the lums here in one go without going up, but it's really difficult to do on N64, so for that reason I go backwards up the rail. The alternative is death warping, but that's slower, and it also costs a golden fist. Now here you've got to go up these ramps, and the ramps are tricky because if you go too fast you can overshoot the next jump. If you go too slow you won't make it up the ramp. Here's probably the climax of the run, I think. I call this little circle the ring of death because if you fall down that pit without getting all the lums, the only way to get the lums is to finish the level, start the level over again, play up to that point, and then finish the level again. So you have to do the entire level twice, so that's the end of the run if that happens. And the sliding section went nicely there, so that's good. In terms of difficulty, it's kind of all downhill from there. Now for this mini-boss, this is why you want to keep the golden fists. It's quite a bit faster to kill him with the golden fists. I like to have 2 golden fists because it's easy to take a hit from this guy. And if you stand in that little spot there, he won't land on top of you, so that's a good place to charge a shot and do some extra damage to him. Yeah, so after this point, the golden fists make no difference. Now you're supposed to climb under this railing here, but you can actually just fly under there, so that saves some time. Yeah, the flying sections are not too hard. They're not nearly as hard as the sliding sections, but you do have to be careful. There are quite a few lumps to grab. Now this group of 5 lums in a row up ahead, if you approach that line with the wrong angle, it's easy to miss one of those lums, and once you miss one, it's pretty hard to correct that mistake because turning around with this thing is not very easy to do, but I did fine there. Here you just can rotate and you avoid those lasers. And that's the last 5 lums, so that's 1,000 lums. Now, right at the beginning of the first form of Razorbeard, you want to hold right because he runs to the side immediately, and if you hold right, you can get that first hit, so that saves some time. Now, during this fight, once he's done shooting those shots there, you want to make sure you stay near the edge of the arena, because if you're near the middle or just away from the edge, he'll do a jumping attack that wastes time. And the amount of time he spends running around before shooting these barrel flying things seems kind of random. Sometimes I think you can manipulate it and get him to shoot immediately, but it didn't work that time. The final form of Razorbeard is not too hard. None of the boss battles in this game are really all that hard to do quickly. At the beginning it's random where that shot appears, so I look in the other tunnel and it's not there, so I go back to the first tunnel. Now, what you do here is you hold A and B and fly into this circle at the top, and it takes you to this secret tunnel here. And once you come out of this tunnel, you have infinite ammo, and so that makes the battle faster. Yeah, so then from then on, strategy is just knock him down and shoot him a couple times every time he falls in. I did miss a shot there. I didn't lose too much time. Now, it's possible to do this one cycle faster. Like when you shoot him there, then he would die. I'm not sure how to do it exactly though. It seems kind of random. But yeah, that's the end. It was pretty difficult to get under 2.5 hours. Of course, there were mistakes in this run. If you got rid of all those, you could theoretically get under 2:29. I'm personally very satisfied with this run. The tricks, for the most part, went really well. There were no deaths, aside from the intentional deaths. And it's very rare to get through the entire game with no deaths, so yeah, I'm satisfied with it. I don't think I'll ever try to improve this category unless there are some major time savers discovered. I kind of doubt that there will be any major time savers discovered, simply because you have to get all the lums, so you have to go pretty much everywhere in the game. But yeah, it was definitely a hard run to do. It was harder than my old 80% run. I plan to go back and optimize 80% some more. I haven't really done a serious 80% run since I did my old run in 2008. There have been a lot of new time savers since then, and hopefully I can get it down to under 2 hours, but I'll just have to see. Yeah, so that's the run. I left the full credits in the video, so you can watch those if you like. Thanks for watching.